Hello, everybody. My name is Dre Brothers, and this is New Wave Jazz. And of course, we have another special guest, a prominent jazz legend, modern jazz legend. That's what I would say. That's what I would call her. She's been working very hard with over, I think, 20 albums, 21 albums. I don't even know where to begin with this artist. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce you to Miss Lisa Hilton.
Hey Dre, how you doing? Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. No problem. I'm glad you're here. And on behalf of WSSB and the great school of South Carolina State University, we just want to say thank you for your time and thank you for just being here with us. Like I said before in the introduction, Lisa, she's a prominent American jazz pianist with an extensive discography in jazz music, considered to be a modern day jazz legend with even a more extensive background in jazz and composing. Today, we're going to take a look at her latest album, More Than Another Day. Lisa, for those who aren't familiar with who you are, let us know who you are.
Oh, okay, let me try and figure this one out. Well, I guess this, in a nutshell, is the short answer. I grew up in a small town on California's Central Coast, and almost from when I was born, I loved the sound of the piano. I begged my parents for a piano and piano lessons. And, of course, my mom said, "You're not going to practice." I said, "Oh, I'll practice. They said, "Well, your sister Sandy didn't practice." I'm like, "Yeah, but she plays the violin. It's okay." And then they said, "Well, your sister Sharon didn't practice." And I said, "Oh, I know she didn't practice, but I promise I will practice." My mom said, "Nope, no lessons until you're 8. If you still want lessons at 8, then we'll get you piano lessons."
Wow.
So in the meantime, I just kind of taught myself how to learn to play the piano with one of those. Did you ever see those little colored keyboard guides? So it's like red, yellow, yellow, blue, blue, green.
Yeah.
And then that got kind of old. So at around 6 years old or so, I wrote my first simple compositions. Nothing like what Mozart wrote, I can assure you. And then when I did start taking lessons, I learned quickly and then started doing a little bit of composing as a teenager. Never quite so enamored with classical music, although I did learn it, and I did learn, what they call the modern or, more avant-garde type of music, but my love was American music, jazz.
You have an unforgettable swing in piano jazz. It's like, I think I know for a fact when I first heard you, I heard a lot of different prominent jazz pianists through your playing. Can you let us in on who you would say inspires you as far as that realm, and what you have learned just from listening and creating your own stance in this music genre?
Well, I think I studied a lot of pianists, but when I say study, I don't mean at great lengths. I know I've heard some jazz musicians, they will take an artist and listen to no other artist for a month, a very in-depth study. But for myself, if there's a pianist that I like, more likely I would be to play and listen to their music, for, I don't know, a day or something, a couple of days. Yeah. But I found that I could never, ever copy anybody else. And sometimes I'd listen to McCoy Tyner. I'm like, "Oh, I love his chords. I bet you I can do that. I can do that." And no, you can't. Only McCoy Tyner could do that. And when you listen to, Bill Evans, I listen to him. Oh, he plays so beautifully. His harmony is so terrific. And he has a pretty sound to his piano, which would be similar to the sound of my piano. Can I replicate Bill Evans? No, cannot replicate him at all. So I think after a few years of really looking at other jazz pianists, I can't do that. We are all different people, I can't look like you. I can't sound like you. I can't play like him. We grow up in different eras. We're interested in different kinds of sounds. The thing I'm always trying to figure out, Dre, is what should today sound like? I know what, last decade sounds like. I know that. I can listen to that. But what does today sound like? What do I want today to sound like? What are we leaving for the next generation? What are they going to say it sounds like now? So those are the things I'm always searching. There's certain pianists, I love what they do, but snippets. I would never, like I said, I can't copy someone, and I wouldn't want to copy someone. Yeah. But I think our preferences create our sound, and also our just innate characteristics. I would never be able to, I don't have as big a hands, perhaps, as McCoy Tyner. And I don't have, perhaps, the harmonic facility of Bill Evans. But we all bring something to the table. So I think you hear my favorite pianist, Horace Silver. I love his groovy lines. Yeah. He used a lot of blues. I've already mentioned McCoy's chords, Bill Evans' harmonies. I think Thelonious Monk was really the beginning of the present-day pianist. I think what he did sounds as it could have been written yesterday, many of his works. Of course, that is an aspiration. Write music that will, people will enjoy forever. And then Brad Melda, I like how he plays very much, too. So just pretty much all of the above, lots of pianists. I've studied Art Tatum a little bit, and Oscar Peterson, too. So there you go, all of the above.
And you said some quite interesting things. It kind of made me think about, how you said we can't copy people. We are our own individuals, and you said a thing. I'm trying to create music. What sounds right? What sounds for today? What sounds like today? So was that a part of the theme of your latest album, More Than Another Day? Let us know, what you were accomplishing. What were you trying to accomplish or accomplishing with your latest album?
Well, there are many artists that write about themselves. What's going on in their love life or what's going on specifically in their life. What I'm always trying to do is write what's going on in our lives. What are we sharing collectively, and how does that sound? And also, you have to be a little prescient. You have to be a little, forward, because the album will come out 6 months after you're writing this, at least, or maybe 9 months. So last March and last April, when I was composing, and those were difficult times. Now we understand we're going through a pandemic, but we didn't really understand what was happening last March and April. So what was my responsibility as an artist to, share this time that we were living through? But also, I knew the album was coming out in December, Dre, and I knew we were going to be done with it, and we were all going to be having a good time, right?
Right. I think everybody was thinking that.
Yeah, so I didn't quite have it right on the timing. But I thought more than anything, last spring represented to me a lot of ups and downs. There was an incredible amount of fear that we were going through. And this was before, the racial protests came a little later in the year. So March and April was mostly, I think, about just fear and uncertainty. But then there was also this just kind of like, there would be relief. You would spend all day in fear and listening to the news. Yeah. And then, you'd go for a walk and you'd see a beautiful sunset or something like that. So I felt in my life there's a lot of, anxiety relief. So that was kind of the pace, I think, that started happening. When I wrote a piece, I wrote a blues song, and it was extraordinarily sad. And I thought, no, can't do that. We have to always be looking for the beauty in life and not just be listening to our fears. So that was the piece, Blues and Beauty. Because, life is, it's a mixed bag. And sometimes all that mixed bag is coming in a day or a year. But I was really trying to represent that in the music and still, not have leave people crying in their drinks, right? so that was being able to represent our time, being able to represent our, decades, our years, and also to portray a positive bent on things. And, there's always beauty in life. I'm always trying to look for that. So those were the main things I was thinking about. This year, we'll see what happens this year.
Okay. Well, with that being said, in new wave jazz fashion, let's take a listen to Blues and Beauty from none other than Lisa Hilton from her latest album, More Than Another Day. This is New Wave Jazz. And we're back. This is New Wave Jazz. You just heard Blues and Beauty by none other than Lisa Hilton. Lisa, we were talking a little bit. You said something quite interesting. You said that now this song is actually picking up traction because of its honesty.
Yeah.
Elaborate on how honest you are when you are composing songs for your albums.
Well, when I first started composing it, and I didn't have any experience, there was one thing I said to myself, is that I was always going to be completely honest. And that's kind of an odd thing to think, because in the way I live my life, I'm honest too. And so why would I be dishonest in my art or my craft or in composing? But it was just, I think, hammering down the fact that I think the way that I thought intuitively, the way we most connect with people is when we share honestly, when we are completely ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so there have been times when I composed about things that were, made me feel vulnerable or sensitive, but I have always made myself just stand my ground and honestly express them, because that's how we connect as people. So I think you can hear in that song that, we are playing the difficulties, but then we also are seeing, the sunrise every day and the sunset. Our world is continuing. The birds are still tweeting outside. Right. That life encompasses a broad range. But when I go into the studio, I'm never sure, what will the band think? What will they think? And when we finish up the recording session, I always like to ask what their favorite tune was to play together with, and they both said the Blues and Beauty, and that's Rudy Royston on drums and Lucas Curtis on bass too. So I think that was their favorite.
Okay, you have, that was well said. You have a very extensive discography. I said that in the beginning. Lisa, do you feel, you also, for our listeners, if you aren't familiar, Lisa Hilton has released a consecutive album for the last 8 years? 8 or so years?
I think it's a little longer.
Oh Lord, I'm selling this short.
It's all right. It's all right. Once I was with a group of people, and we had to introduce ourselves. Mm-hmm. And Wynton Marsalis was there. And when we went around the table, we were saying, "Hi, I'm," Mm-hmm. So I said, "I'm Lisa Hilton. I'm from Central California coast, and I'm a composer, pianist. I have 23 albums." So then I went around to Wynton Marsalis. His eyebrows went up when I said that. And then when I went home and I looked, he has like 100 albums. Wow. So the moral of the story is don't brag about how many albums you have. It's all, it's different for everybody. But
wow. Do you feel like, with that, to me, that's still a lot of work. That's a lot of work going in, and a lot of feeling, a lot of, giving, like you said, honest, being vulnerable. Do you feel like you're under, do you ever feel like you're under a subconscious pressure to complete an album every year?
Absolutely not. In fact, every year when I finish, I'm like, I'm good. I've got, over 200 tracks. I'm good. Let's take a little vacation. Let's take a break or something. And then I go back to the piano, and within a couple of weeks, I'm composing again. I used to think it was some kind of addiction or something, but a friend of mine said, nope, sounds like an artist. Yeah. So it doesn't seem like work to me. There are times when it does, but for the majority of the time, I just sit at the piano and the music comes to me, and then I try and get down the basics of it. I notate the basics of the melody or the song, and then I go back to it later and develop it. But I I really don't remember what I work on. I'm kind of in an altered state or something, I think. And I try and give the piece a name right away so that I can try and remember what it is I'm working on. And then, there are certain times where composition, you can get a little, stuck in a certain spot, like, what am I going to do here? What am I going to do for the bridge? How am I going to end it? I need a better beginning. Places like that can be a little bit more work, but overall, it's a joy. 2 hours, 4 hours can go by really quickly. When you're preparing for a show or a recording session where you have, a date, you got to show up and you got to, have your chops with you.
Yeah.
Well, then there's a little bit of pressure to memorize something or to have, a great performance. But I never feel pressure to compose. That's the fun stuff.
Yeah. I just had to ask because, on the outside looking in, especially for new listeners and, new fans of Lisa Hilton, with that type of information, it's like, man, how, I can only imagine, and to know that you are a pure artist and that you don't see it as work and that you see it as fun, you see it as something that you love to do. I just think that's very amazing, and I am enamored by that. Let's talk a little bit more about More Than Another Day. As I told you before, we talked before this interview. One of my favorite tracks was Secret Beach.
Yeah, that's right. You said that. I like that one too. I don't know. There's something about it. It just put me in a good mood.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what to call it, but somehow that name kind of popped up. I don't live too far from the beach. I can walk down there. It's a real nice, take a break and walk down to the beach.
Oh, wow.
And that particular beach doesn't have a name to it, so I guess I can call it Secret Beach. When I grew up on the Central California coast, there are a lot of beaches that they call kind of like Secret Beach. I think every area has a Secret Beach. There seems to be Pirates Cove, Secret Beach, but they're just like little, small little beaches, just little scoops of beaches that most people don't know about. So if you grow up along the coast, you normally know where the secret beaches are or the little pirate coves or something. So it probably came from that. But it was fun I'm working, a lot of times I'm interested in different kinds of Latin rhythms and using them in different ways.
Right.
And I think that's an exploration of different Latin rhythms. And I love how Lucas sounds on bass on that one. That was really fun.
Yeah. And that's like one of my, really, like I said, it's really one of my favorite songs. I have a few from this album and just from your discography. And Secret Beach definitely has that melody that pulls you in right from the drum. And it's one of those that can easily get stuck in your head, and I think that's
hopefully in a good way.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say that, but that's in a very good way, like you said when I first mentioned it, it makes you feel good, and I think that our listeners would enjoy hearing this cut, Secret Beach. So without further ado, this is Secret Beach by Lisa Hilton from her latest album, More Than Another Day. This is New Wave Jazz. This is New Wave Jazz, and we are back. You just heard one of my favorite tracks, Secret Beach, by none other than Lisa Hilton. Lisa, I'm going to give you the floor on this next one. Let's talk about, that following track, I've Got You Under My Skin.
Yeah. I like those two together. I think Secret Beach, and then you go into I've Got You Under My Skin. So Cole Porter, one of my favorite composers. Mm-hmm. So he was from a small town, too, in Peru, Indiana. And really, I guess that's where the similarities end, because he went to Yale, and while he was a student, he composed something like 200 or 300 songs,
wow,
as well as the Yale school song. Then after that, he was accepted to Harvard Law School. So he was an American genius and quite a musical genius as well. It's one of my favorite songs. It's got a little bit of a Latin lilt. When you listen to Cole Porter's songs, he'll often add just a little bit, or maybe sometimes at the end of a piece. Mm-hmm. So the first time through that we're playing it, it sounds like kind of a typical Cole Porter arrangement. But then we play it through again, and that's kind of like, I don't know, the party started here. Everything's a little livelier, a little more of a Latin beat, a little bit more of a swing. So that one was really fun to record, Dre. We really liked that one a lot. Another one that I like that you haven't brought up, I hope you like it too, is Retro Road Trip.
Oh, I had that one right under Secret Beach on my notes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I really like that one too.
I have these tendencies. I kind of like some vintage sounds, like right around the 60s, I think. Kind of touched a little bit with rock, kind of like a little vintage retro kind of sound that I've been adding a little bit to my compositions the last year or two. I'm working on a new one now, too. I hope people like them. Retro Road Trip, isn't that what we all wanted to do last year, is go on a road trip?
Yes.
So sometimes when I'm at the piano, my mind wanders. Mm-hmm. And, I think I was taking that imaginary road trip myself, maybe in an old Volkswagen bus or something like that, and traipsing, the Big Sur coastline or something.
Lisa, do you have any of your albums on vinyl?
Just one, Horizons. That was a really beautiful recording. Sean Jones on trumpet was terrific, and then we had J.D. Allen on the tenor sax. A great recording. So I did put that one out on vinyl. I was really pleased with it, but I realized the limitations of vinyl. We couldn't put the whole album on it because you can only put so many songs per side.
Yeah.
So we've just done the one.
Okay. I know that. I'm a vinyl. I love vinyl. I'm a big vinyl head. I've been trying to build my collection. I've just got Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington, the Great Summit. I just got that one. And I even hear a little bit of Duke Ellington a little bit in your sound, or in your playing a little bit here and there. Just the style and just the smoothness. Lisa, when we first got back from Secret Beach, we talked about I've Got You Under My Skin. Can you lead us in on this next track? Lead us in on this next track, please.
Okay. Well, it was No Sleep Until, and that is definitely a title that came out of 2020. We had feelings of worries, and I remember thinking last March or April, I'm not sure if I'm going to get any sleep until this is over. I think we all had that feeling. I was very pleased melodically how it came out. I think it was a little bit influenced by Bill Evans' style of playing, but again, I can't play like him at all. But No Sleep Until.
This is New Wave Jazz. This is New Wave Jazz, and what we just heard was No Sleep Until. Lisa, we're listening to, your latest album, More Than Another Day. You mentioned, while we were listening, you mentioned talking about Karma Chaos from this album. Let us in on, the insights behind that track.
Okay. Well, that one, Dre, it almost didn't make it onto the album because,
wow.
It's kind of quirky, but I liked the rhythms. I liked working with. We already talked about. I like putting different Latin rhythms together.
Yeah.
But it's a little tricky doing that, and it seemed like the piece was a little chaotic. And then someone, that I know heard the piece and said, I don't know about that one. And I'm like, no, I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be good. But you're never sure how something will come out when you're working on it. But I think that title was definitely out of last year. I wrote that probably in April. That was before we knew what went on with the election. But it was a pretty, chaotic year, so I think it was a good title for last year, and apparently listeners have really liked it. I'm glad that we ended up recording it, even if I was a little unsure about it at first.
That's another interesting thing that just comes out about when you're creating music for an album. It kind of made me think of, how, I don't know if you know this or you hear it all the time, Michael Jackson and Thriller. I don't think he wasn't too happy about the song Thriller, and Turn Around, and it was, golden. It was a golden.
It changed his life, yeah.
Yeah, it changed his life. So kind of makes you reflect on like, hey, let me have a little faith, and with good faith, Karma Chaos is actually another one of my favorite cuts from this album. So without further ado, we'll let our listeners have a taste of Karma Chaos by none other than the amazing, immaculate Lisa Hilton. This is New Wave Jazz. That was Karma Chaos by none other than our special guest, the immaculate pianist Lisa Hilton from her latest album, More Than Another Day. Speaking of More Than Another Day, you told me something quite interesting about the title track, the intro track into this album. Elaborate and tell us more about the title track of this album.
Well, of course, it didn't start out the title track. I audition each of the compositions. They get judged constantly and analyzed constantly on the path. Let's say if I start composing normally late February and then really get going around March or April, and then between April and we were in the studio in August, I'm listening and a song is on, it's off, it's on, it's off. And some of the pieces I know right away. I knew that it was, they were going to make it, but More Than Another Day, it's kind of an unusual composition form. It doesn't really follow any, rules, I think. But I kept listening to it and thinking, there's something to that one. Okay, I'm going to keep it in there. But really, that one up until the very end, I'm like, well, gosh, what am I going to replace it with, if it doesn't make it? And then I thought, you know what, I'm going to try, let's go back to where this idea originated from, Lisa. I'm always talking to myself. Let's go back to the beginning and see if you can't maybe come up with a new beginning. That was the hook. I put a new beginning on it, which ended up recurring, I think, 3 times. It's kind of those call to attention right there at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then, surprise, it came out well when we recorded it. Both Rudy on drums and Lucas on bass sounded great. And so it made it into the title track, and then we did the video to it as well. Of course, we couldn't do a safe video because studios were closed, and we were lucky to even be able to record. So we had a lot of great pictures from, I used a great photographer at Carnegie Hall, and we were Ryan Nava, and he was able to put together a kind of a slideshow type video where you can really see the guys up close. And, it's as close to a live performance, I think, as we're going to get. So it ended up being the name of the album, too. I didn't know what to call the album or that song, but the one thing I could tell in March or April or May or June or July, that whatever we were going through, that it was going to be more than another day. We couldn't see too far into the future, but we could definitely tell that we were going to be dealing with it tomorrow. And so that became the name of the album. And I didn't want to call it something like Pandemic Blues or, the 2020 Blues or Let's Forget This Year. I wanted to have a subtle reference to, really unusual time in the history of our world.
Yeah, and I think that's what kind of made it stick out. I think that's what makes your album stick out the most, because you can tell that it was a subtle reference to, everything that's been going on, for everybody in the world, And how has that been, Lisa? Elaborate a little bit on that, how that made you feel, I know you're probably used to doing gigs and being with your bandmates and just with people. How were you able to adapt through those times?
Well, like everyone else, we've all gone through different phases of it. Originally, a family member was in Italy, so that every time when you turned the news on, it was how horrible everything was in Italy or in China. And so that was scary. But then, of course, our difficult times arrived on our shores here in America. So we were all experiencing it in a more equal fashion. I have always turned to my creativity. I grew up in a small town. There was not a lot to do. We went to the beach once a month, maybe. We went out to dinner once a month, maybe. And my father was a professor. We was an academic-oriented household. And, we had to create our interesting things in our life if we wanted to have interesting things. So I used my creativity. So the quiet pandemic time has been really a time for creative sorts like myself. Lots of music coming forth. On the other hand, it's sad to not be able to tour. A part of me thinks, well, maybe I can be a little lazy and I don't have to practice so much, But the reality of it is that we do miss it. I miss my bandmates. I missed Carnegie Hall this year. That's not a gig that you really want to pass up.
Right.
But they closed for all of 2021. We played 2020 in January there. We played there 6 years in a row. So, we have a year off this year. So I think, like everyone, it's adjustments. I feel the role of an artist is to represent, like we talked about earlier, our times in whatever way that we can, and to try and extend to other people's lives a feeling of lift, or whatever our main goal is with our particular art. Many artists, they want to express their point of view about immigration, like Antonio Sanchez, or about Black Lives Matter, or different other aspects. I know for me what I'm trying to do is represent our times, and also, jazz was originally to put people in a good mood, so I feel that there is a role to create music that lifts our lives, and we needed it this year. I've been listening to More Than Another Day right next to Billie Holiday and Diana Krall, and so it works with music that's older or newer, and I like that place. I like that it represents the history of jazz, but it's not really looking backwards, it's looking forward.
Okay, well, that was well said, Lisa. Without further ado, in new wave jazz fashion, as always, let's give our listeners a little taste of More Than Another Day, the title track from Lisa Hilton. This is New Wave Jazz. This is New Wave Jazz, and you just heard More Than Another Day, the title track to our special guest latest album, Lisa Hilton. Lisa, as you know, we have had an amazing conversation, amazing time, amazing knowledge given, more info about who you are and, your work ethic and how you just have this love for love for music and jazz and the piano. So we don't have much time, so I hate to have cut this off, but let us know what we can look out for, if there's anything that you want to leave our audience with, how we can follow you on social medias. Let us know.
Well, thanks so much for having me on. I can tell we have the same, we love to talk about music, we love jazz. We like to share that passion everywhere. Really, we love it. I'm also thankful that, you took the time to spend with a woman who's a band leader and a composer, and that's important today, that to shine that light on women working in jazz as well, too.
Yes.
Thanks so much for having me.
No problem, Lisa. This is New Wave Jazz. We thank you for your time. This is WSSB 90.3, South Carolina's jazz station. Keep it locked. More music is on the way.